This is HITZ Malaysia's #1 hit station with me, Keanu, and obviously we all hate nightmares, but we get them a lot. And this guy right here, who I'm talking to, a singer-songwriter from London, England, he has a song out that's literally called Nightmare, the one and only Scott Quinn. Hi, Scott.
Hello, good to see you.
So you just dropped your song on November 20th, I believe, and that's part of your EP dropping next year.
It is, yeah. It's super exciting. It's been a crazy few years. I've done a lot of writing for other people and kind of like rejigging of my team, and we just landed on the right people at the right time with the right songs, and it just felt like a really good time to get stuff out.
So let's talk about your song first, Nightmare. Tell us everything we need to know about this song.
For me, it's one of my favorite tunes I've kind of made because it doesn't sound like much else out there at the minute, and I made it with a good friend of mine. Gil Lewis is an incredible producer. It was in the middle of writing a lot of songs for other people, and I think we just decided maybe we just write something for me. I was going through some tumultuous relationship stuff at the time, as I'm sure we can all relate to. And this song just fell out, and it was just one of those things that was just effortless. And when people say they're in the flow state, and it just happened, and the whole song, as it sounds now, is done on the day, and there was very little tweaking after that.
Do you wake up one day sweating, getting nightmares about your past lover that scarred you, and hence why the song title?
I've written I had another song out called Nightmares with a Australian duo called Setma a few years ago. It's an easy thing for me to write about because nightmares are so kind of like non-tangible. They're scary, but there's so much like vivid imagery and words you can use. And in that last song particularly, there's a lot of that. But in this, it was a lot more direct, and it being more of a turn of phrase of everything that I didn't want to come true came true.
Let's say our listeners want to know, in which department do they go to find Scott Quinn?
So it's been an interesting journey for me because I started out a few years ago very much in this kind of deep, rich world of like James Blake and Sampha and all these kind of like, I loved messing around with weird sounds, and it was all kind of like ethereal and quite vague. And then over the years, I've just started writing so much pop, and I found that I was, not bad at it. So I fell in love with just crafting pop songs. And so now I've really taken that kind of like influence from that time and put it into what I think is just great pop. And I really enjoy writing great pop. And I look up to people, like the Benny Blancos of the world, the Julia Michaels, the JP Saxes, the Charlie Puths. And I just love pop music. I think for a while it was a bit of a dirty word, especially when, I grew up playing in orchestras and in different bands and stuff. And like pop was this kind of thing that was just cheap and kind of tacky. With the BTS things particularly, like years ago, they randomly shared my music out of the blue. And at the time, BTS weren't this huge sensation that they were now. And so when it happened, I was like, who are these guys? I didn't understand who or what they were. And then someone told me it's like a K-pop thing. And back then, K-pop was this thing, especially over here, that was kind of like cheesy. Western music, we didn't have any music in different languages that was like popping off. And now we do. We got like the Rosalia, we got BTS, we got Angèle, all these like French, Korean, Spanish. It's amazing. And like, it's the first time that anything's become popular in the West that we don't understand the lyrics to.
Okay, now we're going to talk about BTS. Ooh la la. Because Scott actually wrote a song for BTS and even Zara Larsson for a song called A Brand New Day. How was that experience like? It's BTS.
It was the whole timeline of that whole thing coming about was so interesting because it was, as I mentioned before, they RM shared one of my songs a few years ago on Twitter, and the whole thing just blew up. I remember vividly, I was in a gallery in London, and my phone was just vibrating and like popping off, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know who this person was. I didn't know who was sharing it. I just knew that their fans were crazy loyal and super loving and accepting of my music. And we started DMing a bit. Looking back on now, was such a crazy thing considering how humongous they are. And we were just chatting about getting in the studio sometime, and obviously they blew up. It was about within that year, the same year, they really blew up over here. Again, I didn't know much about K-pop at that time, and I didn't really understand it. And I have no shame in saying that I did think it was this kind of like different world that I didn't really relate to. But then I just saw firsthand, especially from their fan base, like they had something about them that was healing for people, and like it created a community for people, and their music gave people who didn't feel like they fitted in, it gave them a family essentially. I got an email one day with this really cool beat from Muramasa, and they were saying, look, we're working on this thing for BTS, would you want to jump on it? And it was in this room in my bedroom in East London. I wrote a song to it. Originally, I remember it had a flute sound, and I remember there was talk of them maybe singing it in English. And I thought, if they're going to do that, I want to kind of keep that Korean element in there. So I did some research, found out there was this ethnic flute from Korea called a taegum. It was the first. I do this thing where I put my phone on record and I just do the melodies that come off the top of my head. And that melody that I did off the top of my head is what ended up on the actual track. There's no tweaks to that. And then we sent it off. And then I heard that Zara Larsson was going to jump on it. And then her and a really good talented songwriter called Max Wolfgang, they kind of changed the lyric, which I'm grateful for. The lyric really made it for me. It turned it into a BTS song. It was like this global, uplifting song, and it wouldn't have had the same impact it did if they went with my original lyric. I do believe that.
Okay, Scott, so now let's talk about your EP dropping next year. What is it called and what can we expect from it?
It's called Better For Me. It's got 4 tracks in it, and we've kind of honed it down to just 4 songs that I'm incredibly proud of. And it's a good mix. It's, Nightmare straight out the is a really good kind of return for me. I think it's a good kind of like, I'm back. And then from there, we got some solid pop songs, and it ends with a beautiful ballad that I wrote with a friend of mine called Adam Argyle. That is I've got a really good feeling about it. And I think it's one of those songs that's just going to hit people in the feels, because it hits me in the feels every time. It's just exciting to have a really strong body of work, because I've kind of dabbled in the past and released bits and bobs, but this is the first time I feel like I've got something to say. I'm just proud of the outcome. So fingers crossed for a good year next year, and hopefully we'll all be in a position where we can play this thing live and actually go to gigs again.
Scott, it's been a wonderful chat with you. Thank you so much for your time. Hope to see you in Malaysia.
I appreciate it.